Mason, would you please stop messing with the bow tie? It's perfect. The stylist slapped my hand away for the third time. Her expression, a perfect blend of exasperation and the kind of pity reserved for a golden retriever who just won't listen. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. Impeccable black tux, meticulously styled hair. Even my nails had been buffed to a discreet, healthy shine. The perfect groom, if you ignored the fine sheen of sweat on my forehead and the incessant twitch in my left eye. You don't think she'll change her mind, do you? I asked for the 10th time. The stylist rolled her eyes. Mr. Hayes, the ceremony starts in 15 minutes. If Miss Davenport was going to get cold feet, she would have. Her words were cut short by a frantic knock on the door. My best man, my old college roommate Alex Weber, burst in, his face whiter than his dress shirt. Mays, we have a problem. He swallowed hard. The bride. She's gone. The can of hairspray in the stylist's hand clattered to the floor. I pulled out my phone. A single text from Chloe sat unread. Mason, I'm sorry. I can't go through with an arranged marriage. Don't look for me. I wish you the best. I looked up at Alex. When did she leave? Her makeup artist said Chloe told her she was touching up her lipstick 10 minutes ago, and she just vanished. Her best friend Mia Thompson's car is gone, too. I took a deep breath, the muffled sounds of the guests in the grand ballroom already audible. 300 people, all heavy hitters from the worlds of business and politics. Charles Davenport had dropped 7 figures on this fairy tale wedding, and the princess had just fled the castle. Does Davenport know? Alex nodded. He's about to blow a gasket. He sent every security guard he is looking for her. Hotel security footage shows Chloe leaving through a fire exit. Mia was waiting in the parking garage. I couldn't help but smile. That was Chloe, all right. Even her escape was meticulously planned. Maze, you okay? Alex asked, his eyes filled with concern. I stood up, smoothing a bow tie that needed no smoothing. Couldn't be better. I pulled out my phone again and dialed a number I had saved but never called. Is this Mr. Sterling? Yes, it's Mason Hayes. That Waterford Tower condo on Lakeshore Drive. The prenup gift? I'm selling. I want to sign the papers now. All cash. The faster the better. Hanging up, I looked at the dumbfounded faces of Alex and the stylist. What? She can run. Why can't I? A commotion erupted from the direction of the ballroom. Charles Davenport's enraged roar was faintly audible. Lock down every exit out of the city. Pull the traffic cam footage. I want to know where that ungrateful daughter of mine has gone. I clapped Alex on the shoulder. Stall them for me. Tell them I'm heartbroken and need a moment alone. Where are you going? To follow in my bride's footsteps, I said with a wink. But first, I've got to cash out the wedding gift from my mother-in-law. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in a realtor's office, signing the sales contract. The multi-million-dollar condo had been a gift from Chloe's mother, but the deed was in my name, a stroke of brilliant foresight on her part, I now realized. Mr. Hayes, are you sure you want an all-cash offer? The market value, 10% discount if the wire transfer clears today. I cut him off. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing with missed calls from Charles Davenport and the wedding planner. 2 hours later, I was standing in Chicago's Union Station with a light duffel bag, a satisfied smile on my face as I looked at the new balance in my bank account. Chloe probably thought she was the only winner in this fiasco, but she was wrong. I bought a ticket for the next Amtrak train heading west, destination chosen at random. Before boarding, I sent one last text to Charles Davenport. Sir, I will handle the matter of the condo. Please allow me some time to process this. Then I shut off the phone, popped out the SIM card, and dropped it into a trash can. As the train pulled away from the platform, I watched the city skyline recede, feeling an incredible sense of release. This arranged marriage was never what I wanted, but refusing it outright would have meant making an enemy of a titan like Charles Davenport. Now, the bride had bolted first, leaving me, the victim, free to liquidate the golden handcuffs. It was perfect. Chloe. Oh, Chloe. I murmured to the reflection in the window. Thank you for doing the one thing I wanted to do, but never had the guts to. I wondered where she was, how she was doing. It didn't matter. I had a feeling we'd be seeing each other again very soon. After all, I'd installed a tracking app on her phone when I fixed it for her last week. Hashtag, 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 the car groaned as it rolled over a speed bump, jolting Chloe awake. Her forehead nearly smacked against the window. Where are we? She asked, rubbing her eyes. Her throat felt like it was coated in sand. Havenwood, Oregon. Mia kept one hand on the steering wheel, passing a bottle of water to her with the other. You were out like a light. I was starting to think you drug yourself. Chloe twisted the cap and chugged half the bottle, the cool water bringing her back to life. The concrete jungle of Chicago had given way to lush green forests. In the distance, a few low buildings were veiled in the morning mist. Are you sure this place is safe? Chloe rolled down the window, and a wave of damp air, rich with the smell of earth and pine, rushed in. Mia rolled her eyes. Please, this place is so off the grid. Google Maps barely bothers to chart it. If your dad's goons find you here, I'll live stream myself eating a keyboard. The car turned onto a narrow lane and stopped in front of a 3-story building. The faded sign read the Havenwood Inn. An old woman sat on the porch, basking in the sun with her eyes closed. ID, Mia said, holding out her hand. Chloe pulled one from her wallet and passed it over. Sarah Lynn? Who's that? You for now. Mia waggled the card. It's my cousin's. She's studying abroad. Just remember your new backstory. You're a poor woman escaping an abusive husband. Keep your head down. Chloe opened her mouth and closed it. An abuse victim was definitely a lower profile than a runaway heiress. During check-in, the old innkeeper, Mrs. Gable, studied Chloe's face for a long moment. All by yourself, dear? Yes, Chloe mumbled, staring at her shoes. Room 302. South-facing, gets good light. Mrs. Gable handed her a brass key. 80 a night, or 1,500 for the month. The room was cleaner than she expected, with pale green wallpaper, hardwood floors, a single bed, and a small balcony. Chloe tossed her backpack on the bed and collapsed into a wicker chair by the window. So how does freedom feel? Mia leaned against the doorframe, a smirk on her face. Chloe closed her eyes, the sunlight a warm, red glow against her eyelids. Quieter than I imagined. Quiet. Mia pulled out her phone. Your dad's about to tear Chicago apart. She showed Chloe a news clip. Charles Davenport stood at the abandoned wedding venue, his face a thundercloud as he spoke to a throng of reporters. My daughter has been kidnapped. The police are investigating. Chloe almost fell out of her chair. Kidnapped. Smart, right? Mia's eyebrows shot up. This way, the cops are looking for a victim, not a runaway, and your dad's business rivals will think it's a genuine abduction. Double insurance. Mia, you're a genius, Chloe said, genuinely impressed. Nah, I've just watched more episodes of Criminal Minds than you. Mia pulled a wad of cash from her pocket. $5,000. Make it last. I'll come see you again next week. As Chloe took the money, her nose started to sting. Thank you. Don't get all sappy on me. Mia waved a hand dismissively. Oh, by the way, things are getting interesting with your fiancé. Chloe frowned. Mason? What about him? He disappeared from the wedding, too, Mia said, scrolling through her phone. Your dad told everyone he was overcome with grief. But according to my friend's cousin's brother, he listed the prenup condo with a realtor the same day. What? Chloe's eyes widened. The Waterford Tower place? Yep. 10% below market. All cash, offer preferred. Mia let out a low whistle. Looks like your Boy Scout fiancé isn't such a pushover after all. Chloe walked out on a balcony and took a deep breath. Mason sold the condo? That was completely unexpected. In her mind, Mason Hayes was a mild-mannered, compliant pushover, a man who would never dare cross her father. How much did he get for it? Who knows? Enough to lay low for a good long while. Mia glanced at her watch. I've got to go. Any later, and your dad will get suspicious of me, too. After Mia left, Chloe lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Her phone was off and tucked away in a drawer. She was completely cut off from her old life. The feeling was strange, like being dropped into a parallel universe. Her stomach rumbled, reminding her she hadn't eaten in nearly 24 hours. She put on a baseball cap and a face mask and decided to explore the town. Havenwood was more alive than it looked. The narrow main street was lined with small shops, a grocer, a shoe repair, a hardware store, and a few small eateries. Chloe picked a diner that looked clean and ordered a bowl of chili. You're not from around here, are you, Han? The waitress asked as she ladled out the chili. Chloe nodded. Visiting family. One of Mrs. Gable's guests. The waitress smiled. Don't get many young folks staying at the inn. The chili was surprisingly good. Chloe devoured it and ordered a second bowl. When she went to pay, the waitress refused to charge her for the second one. You're too skinny, girl. Eat up, she said, patting Chloe's hand. Come back soon, you hear? Chloe walked out of the diner, her eyes welling up. Back in Chicago, nobody cared if she'd eaten. They only cared if she wore the right dress, the right jewelry, if she could make the Davenport name look good at another stuffy gala. She spent the afternoon buying some basic necessities and a change of clothes. As she passed a coffee shop with a help wanted sign in the window, she stopped. Barista, $15/hour. Chloe felt a rapidly shrinking roll of cash in her pocket and pushed the door open. At that same moment, in the plushest law firm in Chicago, Charles Davenport slammed a file on the mahogany desk. I want a full accounting. Who did that kid sell the condo to, and where did the money go? The lawyer wiped sweat from his brow. Mr. Davenport, the transaction was perfectly legal. The property was registered solely in Mr. Hayes' name. He had the full right to dispose of it. Bullshit. Charles slammed his fist on the desk. My wife paid for that place. But the gift letter explicitly states, I don't care what the letter says. Charles pulled out his phone. Give me Markson at the bank. Yes, right now. 5 minutes later, he hung up, his face a dark mask. Freeze every one of Chloe's accounts. Credit cards, trust funds, all of it. Let's see how long she lasts out there on her own. Sir, is that entirely? And another thing, Charles continued, ignoring the lawyer. Give me the best private investigator in the country. $1 million reward. I want her found, dead or alive. When he was finally alone in his office, Charles opened a drawer and took out a photograph. It was Chloe in her cap and gown, her smile brilliant. His thumb gently stroked his daughter's face before he slammed the picture face down on the desk. His phone rang. It was his wife. He took a deep, calming breath before answering. Charles, have you lost your mind? Half of Chicago's high society was at that wedding, and now our daughter is missing. What am I supposed to tell people? Tell them she's ill, he grumbled, rubbing his temples. Ill? Helen saw Mason storm out of the venue with his own eyes. The whole city is gossiping that Chloe ran off with someone else. A vein throbbed in his temple. That Hayes boy, I'll destroy him. Save it, his wife said with a cold laugh. I told you he wasn't as simple as he looked. You wouldn't listen. And now you've lost a daughter and a multi-million-dollar condo. What are you talking about? I just heard from a friend at the embassy. Mason Hayes started inquiring about immigration to Singapore 3 months ago. His wife sighed. He never planned on marrying Chloe. He was just waiting for his chance to run. Charles's face turned ashen. Are you saying he used our daughter? What do you think? She shot back. Not everyone is dying to get their hands on your precious empire. After hanging up, Charles stood at his panoramic window, looking down at the city lights. For the first time, he felt things spiraling completely out of his control. 2 weeks later, at the Havenwood coffee shop, Sarah, latte for table 3. Chloe expertly frothed the milk, pouring a slightly lopsided heart on top. Back in Chicago, the coffee she drank was from single estate imported beans, a single cup costing more than her entire day's wages here. Now, she could actually tell the difference between instant and freshly ground. Not bad, kid. You're a fast learner, said Chun, the owner, taking the cup with a nod of approval. Chloe smiled and went back to wiping down the espresso machine. The past 2 weeks had been more fulfilling than she could have ever imagined. She worked from 9 to 4, spent her afternoons reading at the town library, and her evenings watching cheesy soap operas on the inn's ancient television. No galas, no schmoozing, no chance encounters arranged by her father. Sarah, before you clock out, grind the beans for tomorrow, Chun said, polishing a glass. Weekend's coming, it'll get busy. Chloe nodded, then remembered something. Chun, could I get a small advance on my paycheck? He raised an eyebrow. Short on cash. Yeah, I need to buy a used phone, she lied. In reality, the money from Mia was almost gone, and her monthly rent at the inn was due next week. Chun counted out $500 from the register. Take this. If it's not enough, let me know. Chloe thanked him, her heart swelling with gratitude. After work, she didn't go straight back to the inn. She went to the town's only internet cafe. She booted up a computer, logged into a webmail account, and typed in the password she knew by heart. No new messages. Biting her lip, she opened a news site and searched for Davenport Industries. The latest article was from 3 days ago. Charles Davenport attending a charity event, with no mention of his missing daughter. She hesitated, then typed in Mason Hayes. The results were sparse. Just a few articles from the day of the wedding, all quoting a source saying the groom was too distraught to comment on the bride's disappearance. Quite the actor, she muttered, closing the browser. It was dark when she left the cafe. She took a shortcut through a narrow alley when she heard footsteps behind her. She quickened her pace, and the footsteps sped up to match. Her heart leaped in her throat. Havenwood was safe, but you never knew. Sarah Lynn, a man's voice called out from behind her. Chloe froze, then slowly turned around. A man in a dark trench coat stood in the shadows, his face obscured. You have the wrong person, she said, her voice low as she took a step back. Do I? The man chuckled. In that case, Miss Chloe Davenport, perhaps we could have a chat. Chloe's blood ran cold. She spun around to run, but a hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. Let go of me. Relax. The man released her, pulling out a badge. Private investigator. Hired by your father. Chloe stared at the ID for 3 seconds, then laughed. My dad hired a B-list detective like you? Guess he's not in that much of a hurry to find me. The PI pocketed his badge. Miss Davenport, your father is offering $1 million for your safe return. But I think you and I can make a deal. What kind of deal? You give me $100,000, and I'll tell you where Mason Hayes is. The PI lowered his voice. I know you must hate him. He ruined your wedding and ran off with your family's money. Chloe almost laughed out loud. Why would I want to know where he is? Revenge, of course, the PI said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. From what I've gathered, Mason wasn't heartbroken at all. This was all premeditated. Several of your father's key clients have recently received anonymous emails full of damaging information about Davenport Industries. Chloe froze. What are you talking about? I'm talking about, the PI leaned in closer, your little escape playing right into Mason Hayes' hands. He used the chaos you created to attack your father's company, while he skipped town with the condo money. Chloe stood under the dim streetlight, the world spinning around her. Mason? The quiet, reserved Mason Hayes? You planned all this? Where's your proof? The PI pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. In it, Mason was in a cafe, deep in conversation with a middle-aged man. The timestamp was a week before the wedding. Who is that? The biggest competitor your father has. A man named Walter Kane. The PI put his phone away. So, $100,000 for the full dossier? Chloe took a deep breath. I don't have that kind of money. You can find a way. He handed her a business card. I'll be back in 3 days. Watching the detective disappear into the night, Chloe's legs felt so weak she had to lean against a wall to stay upright. She had thought she was the one in control of this whole mess, but it turned out. Her pocket vibrated. It was a text from Mia. Emergency. Your dad froze all your accounts and has people watching me. Can't come next week. Take care. Chloe shoved the phone back in her pocket, a harsh reality crashing down on her. She was truly, completely on her own. ####. Sarah, table 3 ordered a pour over. You want to give a shot? Chen's voice from the front of the cafe pulled Chloe from her thoughts. Wiping her hands, she hurried out of the back room. It was the first time he'd let her handle a pour over, though she'd been practicing secretly for 2 weeks. Ethiopian Yirgachef, light medium roast, Chen said, handing her the bag of beans. He lowered his voice. Guy at table 3 knows his coffee. Don't screw it up. Chloe nodded and took a deep breath. She ground the beans, trying to look professional as she began the pour. Water at 200 degrees, a 30-second bloom, then 3 slow, concentric circles. Nice technique. A low, masculine voice spoke from just behind her. Chloe's hand jerked, and hot water splashed over the side of the filter. The voice was too familiar, so familiar she heard it in her nightmares. No, it can't be. She slowly raised her head, her gaze traveling up from a pair of polished leather boots, past long legs and well-tailored trousers, over a casual but expensive blazer, and finally settling on the face she thought she'd never have to see again. Mason Hayes. He was standing right there, a faint, unreadable smile playing on his lips, his eyes so clear you'd think they'd just run into each other at a friend's casual get-together. You. Chloe's throat tightened. She'd almost blurted out, What the hell are you doing here? Liam Marshall, Mason said, extending a polite hand. I just moved to Havenwood. Chloe stared at his hand, at the long, elegant fingers, her mind racing. What was he playing at? Pretending not to know her? Or had he genuinely not recognized her? She was, after all, wearing no makeup, a coffee-stained apron, and her hair was thrown into a messy ponytail. Sarah, you in there? Chun called from behind the counter. Chloe snapped back to reality, hastily shaking Mason's hand. Sarah Lynn. Miss Lynn's pour-over technique is very professional, Mason said with a slight nod. Where did you learn? On online videos, Chloe stammered, quickly looking down to continue the pour. Damn it, you're a terrible actress. Mason didn't leave. Instead, he leaned against the bar, watching her with an unnerving intensity. Chloe could feel his gaze on her face, like an X-ray trying to see through her flimsy disguise. Are you here on vacation, Mr. Marshall? She asked, forcing herself to stay calm, trying to seize control of the conversation. Something like that, Mason smiled. Escaping the city, you know how it is. Chloe nearly dropped the kettle. What was he implying? Coffee's ready. She hurriedly placed the cup on a tray, ready to deliver it to table 3. Allow me, Mason said, smoothly taking the tray from her. As a fellow Lynn, I feel it's my duty to assist a lady. Chloe watched, dumbfounded, as he walked toward table 3, his posture as straight and tall as an oak tree. What was that about a fellow Lynn? What game was he playing? Sarah, stop daydreaming and get to those dishes in the back. Chen's voice broke through her stupor. Chloe practically fled to the back room, shutting the door behind her and leaning against the wall, gasping for air. This couldn't be a coincidence. Havenwood was over 2,000 miles from Chicago. How could Mason Hayes just happen to show up at the very coffee shop where she worked? And his behavior was so strange. It was like he was acting. A pile of dirty dishes sat in the sink. Chloe mechanically turned on the faucet. She had to calm down and think. Mason was pretending not to know her, and he'd changed his name, Liam Marshall. What kind of terrible disguise was that? Unless he had a plan. Ah, Chloe cried out as hot water splashed on her hand. She turned off the water, staring at the red mark, when a more terrifying thought struck her. If Mason could find her, could her father's private investigator be far behind? Sarah, we're getting busy out here. Chen's shout interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Chloe took a deep breath and retied her apron. Whatever Mason's game was, she couldn't let him rattle her. If he wanted to play strangers, she'd play along. For the next few hours, Chloe forced herself to focus on work, deliberately avoiding the area where Mason was sitting. But the cafe was too small. She could feel his eyes on her, following her every move. To make matters worse, the man at table 3, an older gentleman with a goatee, seemed to have hit it off with Mason, and the two were deep in conversation. That Mr. Marshall seems like a nice guy, Chen remarked around 3 o'clock, after the lunch rush had died down. He's an architect from San Francisco. Wants to open a studio here in town. Chloe nearly twisted the cleaning rag in two. He told you that? Yep. Just signed a 3-year lease on that empty Victorian on Main Street. Chun poured her a glass of lemonade. What? You two know each other? No, Chloe said quickly, taking a long drink. He just looks familiar. First time in Havenwood, he said. Chun chuckled. Sarah, don't tell me you've got a crush on him. Chloe choked on her lemonade, coughing violently. A crush on Mason Hayes? The man she'd left at the altar? The man who was possibly plotting to ruin her entire family? I'm taking out the trash, she said, grabbing the bin full of coffee grounds and escaping out the back door. The back alley was quiet and damp. Chloe dumped the trash and took several deep breaths to calm her racing heart. Need a hand? Chloe spun around. Mason was standing less than 10 feet away, holding a large black umbrella. The setting sun cast a golden halo around him, making him look like he'd just stepped out of a painting. No, thanks. She instinctively took a step back, her back hitting the cold brick wall. Mason didn't come any closer, just gestured with the umbrella. Looks like rain. The forecast didn't say anything about rain. Mountain weather. Unpredictable, he said, looking up at the sky. Just like life. Full of surprises. Chloe narrowed her eyes. Like what? Like running into someone who looks remarkably familiar in a strange place. Mason's gaze met hers. Miss Lynn reminds me of an old acquaintance. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Oh, what kind of acquaintance? Someone who... Mason seemed to search for the right words. Who left without saying goodbye. Just then, a low rumble of thunder echoed in the distance, and fat raindrops began to fall. Mason quickly opened the umbrella, stepping forward to cover her. Thanks, I can. Before Chloe could finish, a gust of wind caught the umbrella, flipping it inside out. Mason fumbled with it, then accidentally stepped in a puddle, lost his balance, and stumbled toward her. They both went down in a heap against the damp wall, his elbow landing just beside her head, narrowly avoiding crushing her. Sorry, he murmured, his breath warm against her cheek. He was too close. So close she could smell the faint, woodsy scent of his cologne. So close she could see the tiny raindrops clinging to his eyelashes. In a romantic movie, this would be the part where they kissed. In reality, Chloe just wanted to punch him. Get off, she said through clenched teeth. Mason immediately pulled back, offering a hand to help her up. Chloe ignored it, pushing herself up against the wall. She was already soaked. Let me walk you home, he said, picking up the mangled umbrella, looking slightly embarrassed. Not necessary. Chloe turned to leave, but a loud crash from inside the cafe stopped her. Sarah, get in here quick. Chen's voice was laced with panic. Chloe rushed back inside to a scene of chaos. A pipe under the kitchen sink had burst, and a powerful jet of water was shooting toward the ceiling. The floor was already covered in an inch of water. Chen was futilely trying to stem the flow with a dish towel, completely drenched. Where's the main shut-off valve? Mason was suddenly standing behind her. Outside, by the back wall. Chen yelled. Without a word, Mason plunged back into the rain. A minute later, the geyser of water slowed to a trickle, then stopped. Chloe stood frozen, looking at the flooded kitchen, not knowing where to begin. Let's clear the water first, Mason said, rolling up his sleeves and grabbing a mop, before it leaks through to the basement. For the next half hour, the three of them worked together to clean up the mess. Mason's competence was stunning. He not only knew how to assess the burst pipe, but he also seemed to know exactly where Chun kept his tools, moving with the efficiency of a professional plumber. Mr. Marshall, I can't thank you enough, Chun said, vigorously shaking Mason's hand. You saved my little shop. Happy to help, Mason said modestly. Water dripped from his hair, and his white shirt was plastered to his body, revealing the faint outline of a well-defined six-pack. Chloe quickly looked away. "I'll get some towels." When she returned, Chin was on the phone in the front of the shop, leaving her alone with Mason in the kitchen. He was examining the burst pipe, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Here." Chloe handed him a towel. He took it and wiped his face. "Thanks. This pipe is shot. You'll need a new one. You know how to fix pipes, too?" Chloe couldn't help asking. "Worked as a handyman to get through college," he said casually. "And later, as an architect, you spend enough time on construction sites. You learn a little bit of everything." Chloe thought of her father's assessment of Mason, a bookish architect who can't do anything but draw blueprints. It seemed her father couldn't have been more wrong. "Thank you for today," she said reluctantly, "but I still want to know why you're in Havenwood." Mason paused, towel in hand, and looked her directly in the eye. "I told you, escaping the city. A coincidence." "There are no coincidences in life," he said, handing the towel back to her. "Only well-disguised inevitabilities. I'll see you tomorrow, Miss Lynn." Chloe watched him leave, her mind in a whirl. Mason Hayes was an enigma, and she wasn't even sure she wanted to know the answers to the puzzle he presented. Chin insisted on closing early and pressed $200 into Chloe's hand for a taxi. The rain had stopped, but she took the cab anyway. She'd had enough excitement for one day. Back at the inn, Mrs. Gable gave her a conspiratorial wink. "You have a visitor, dear, waiting for you outside your room." Chloe's heart skipped a beat. Mason, or the private investigator? She cautiously climbed the stairs to the third floor. Tucked into the corner by her door was a familiar figure, scrolling on her phone. "Mia?" Mia jumped up and threw her arms around her. "Surprise." Chloe unlocked the door and pulled her best friend inside. "What are you doing here? I thought you were being watched." "I gave him the slip," Mia said proudly, pulling snacks and toiletries from her backpack. "Brought you some supplies." A wave of warmth washed over Chloe. "Thanks, but I saw Mason today." The potato chip in Mia's hand fell to the floor. "What?" "He showed up at the cafe, pretended not to know me, and said his name was Liam Marshall." Whoa, hold on," Mia interrupted. "Are you sure it was him? Not just someone who looks like him. Unless there are two identical men in the world who happen to be architects and know how to fix plumbing," Chloe said, collapsing onto the bed. She recounted the entire day's bizarre events. When she finished, Mia's expression was dead serious. "Chloe, this is not a coincidence. He followed you here." "I thought so too. But how did he find me?" "The PI," Mia guessed. "Or maybe you put a tracking app on your phone." Chloe shot upright. "The week before the wedding, he fixed my phone for me." "See," Mia slapped her thigh. "I told you he wasn't as simple as he looked." "Chloe, you have to be careful. He could be here for revenge." "Revenge for leaving him at the altar? Or," Mia lowered her voice, "maybe he has some beef with your dad, and he's using your escape to create chaos." Chloe remembered what the private investigator had said, and a cold dread settled in her stomach. If Mason was really plotting something, she was in a very dangerous position. "What should I do?" "First, don't let him know you've recognized him," Mia advised. "Second, find out why he's really here. If he leased a building, there has to be public record of it." Chloe nodded, a sudden wave of exhaustion washing over her. She thought running away was an escape, but it felt like she'd just jumped into an even more complicated mess. "All right," Mia said, pulling a new phone and SIM card from her bag. "Use this. Don't turn on your old one again." Chloe took the phone gratefully. "You're a lifesaver." "I know," Mia said with a proud toss of her head. "But Chloe, you need to be prepared. If Mason Hayes really is planning something, this game has only just begun." Chloe looked out the window. The town of Havenwood was peaceful in the night, but she knew a storm was brewing. ####. At 6 a.m., Chloe tiptoed out the back door of the inn. At this hour, Havenwood was still asleep, the streets empty except for a lone street sweeper. She'd left 2 hours early specifically to avoid the man calling himself Liam Marshall. "Morning, Sarah." Chloe nearly choked. Mason, no, Liam, was sitting under the large oak tree in front of the inn, a steaming cup of coffee in his hands. The morning light filtered through the leaves, dappling his face in shifting patterns of shadow and gold. What are you doing here?" she asked, clutching the strap of her backpack so tightly her knuckles turned white. He stood up, brushing non-existent dust from his jeans. "Just out for a morning run. Turns out the innkeeper here is a distant cousin of my aunt." Chloe almost laughed out loud. The lie was so ridiculous, it was almost impressive. Mrs. Gable had lived in Havenwood for 60 years. She didn't have any architect relatives from San Francisco. "Oh, what a coincidence," she said, forcing a smile. "I have to get to work. I'll walk with you." "It's on my way," he said, falling in a step beside her. "My new studio is right next to the cafe." Chloe clenched her jaw. The man had more nerve than a brain surgeon. She picked up her pace, but his long legs easily kept up. Do you always go to work this early? Yep. Have you had breakfast? Yep. Did you sleep well? Chloe stopped dead in her tracks. Mr. Marshall, are we friends? He blinked, his expression as innocent as a schoolboy's. Just being neighborly. Isn't that what people do in small towns? She took a deep breath, telling herself not to fall for his act. He was trying to provoke her, to make her slip up. I appreciate the concern, she said with a tight smile, but I prefer to walk alone. Understood. He nodded, but made no move to leave. By the way, I heard there's a farmer's market this weekend. Have you been? She started walking again, almost at a jog. He followed at a leisurely pace, even stopping to pluck a wildflower from the side of the road and offer it to her. A morning daisy, for you. Chloe stared at the little yellow flower, speechless. What was this? Some kind of twisted rom-com for runaway fiancés. I don't like flowers, she said flatly, pushing open the back door of the cafe. Chen was inside taking inventory. He saw them enter one after the other, his eyebrows shooting up. Well, did you two plan this? We just ran into each other, Chloe said quickly, tying on her apron. Chun, where's the bean order list for today? Chun gave her a knowing look and handed her a clipboard. Mr. Marshall, the landlord just dropped off the keys to your studio. Mason took the keys. Thanks. Oh, by the way, I noticed yesterday the cafe's drainage pipe looks a little old. I happen to know a reliable plumber, if you need a recommendation. That would be fantastic. Chen's eyes lit up. Old man Hemlock retired to Florida, and I've been dreading finding someone new. Chloe started grinding coffee beans with enough force to power a small engine. When had Mason had time to inspect the drainage pipe? What was he up to? Sarah, go break down those boxes in the backyard, Chun said suddenly. Granted a reprieve, Chloe practically ran out the back door. The morning sun filled the small yard, where several large cardboard boxes were stacked. She found a box cutter and started slicing them open. Need a hand? Her hand slipped, the blade carving a jagged line across the cardboard. Mason had appeared behind her, so close she could smell the faint, clean scent of his aftershave. Do you ever make a sound when you walk? She snapped, spinning around and nearly colliding with his chest. She quickly stepped back. He shrugged. Occupational hazard for an architect. We learned to move quietly. He crouched down and deftly sliced open another box. New cups. Yeah, she admitted grudgingly. Chun said the weekend rush is big, so we need to be prepared. Mason picked up a mug, holding it up to the light. Nice glaze, but some of these might have air bubbles. I'll help you sort them. Chloe watched his long fingers turn the cup, his movements as precise as if he were handling a delicate instrument. Back in Chicago, she'd only ever seen him in a suit and tie. She never would have guessed those hands could be so adept at manual labor. Did you do this kind of thing a lot? The question was out of her mouth before she could stop it. It sounded too much like she was prying into his past. A small smile played on his lips. Worked at a coffee shop in college. And you spend enough time on construction sites. You pick things up. He handed her a cup. This one has a chip on the rim. Could cut somewhat. She took the cup, her fingertips accidentally brushing the back of his hand. She flinched as if she'd been shocked. Mason pretended not to notice, continuing to inspect the other cups. Why did you come to Havenwood? She asked suddenly. His movements paused for a fraction of a second. Like I said, to escape the city. What a coincidence, Chloe said pointedly. So did I. He looked up at her, the sunlight catching in his eyes. Yes, he said, his voice soft. What a coincidence. They held each other's gaze for a second before both looking away. Chloe's heart was racing. Get a grip, she told herself. This wasn't some cute, flirty banter. This was psychological warfare. Sarah, we've got customers. Chen's voice broke the spell. Chloe practically ran from the backyard. For the next few days, she did everything she could to avoid being alone with Mason. But Havenwood was too small. Whether she was at the laundromat, the grocery store, or the library, she would inevitably run into him. On Thursday afternoon, Chloe took a break to go to the local community pool for a swim. As she approached the entrance, she heard a familiar voice singing, terribly off-key, but with impressive volume. Splish splash, I was talking a bath. Chloe froze. Mason? At the community pool. She turned to leave, but ran right into the woman managing the front desk. Sarah, there you are, the woman boomed. Perfect timing. Your boyfriend's in there, singing his head off. The seniors are complaining. He's not my Liam. Your girlfriend's here. The woman was already yelling toward the pool. The door to the men's locker room swung open, and Mason peeked out, his hair covered in shampoo, a towel wrapped around his waist. Water trickled down his well-defined chest and disappeared under the edge of the towel. Chloe swore she didn't stare, at least not for more than 3 seconds. Sarah, he said, looking genuinely surprised, as if they'd run into each other at a Michelin-star restaurant instead of the Havenwood public pool. "You're here for a swim?" Chloe's face felt hot enough to fry an egg. I just remembered I have something to do." "Wait," he called after her. "They're showing an outdoor movie in the town square tonight at 7. "Want to go?" "I'm busy." "Roma holiday," he added. "It's about a runaway princess and a reporter." Chloe narrowed her eyes. What was he implying? "We'll see," she said vaguely and hurried away. At 6:50 p.m., Chloe was hiding in her room at the inn, refusing to admit she'd changed her outfit 3 times and even put on lipstick. Her phone was filled with texts from Mia, all warning her to stay away from Mason. "He's definitely planning something. Don't forget how he sold the condo." "Chloe, don't tell me you're actually starting to fall for him?" She tossed the phone onto the bed. Of course, she wasn't falling for him. She was just curious about what he was really up to. That was all. At precisely 7 o'clock, there was a knock on her door. "Sarah, are you in there?" It was Mrs. Gable. "There's an out-of-towner in the square, asking around for a girl who looks a lot like you." Chloe threw the door open. "What kind of person?" "Trench coat, sunglasses. Said he was looking for his sister," Mrs. Gable whispered. "Didn't seem like a good sort, if you ask me." The private investigator. Chloe's blood ran cold. Her father's man had found Havenwood. "Mrs. Gable, can I borrow a hat and a jacket?" 5 minutes later, wearing a floppy fisherman's hat and an oversized flannel shirt, Chloe slipped out the back of the inn. She had to warn Chin not to come to work tomorrow, then find a place to hide for a few days. But as she rounded the corner, she ran straight into a solid wall of a person. "Careful," Mason said, his hands steadying her shoulders, his eyes sharp and alert. "What's wrong?" She tried to pull away, but his grip was like iron. "Let go." "Is someone looking for you?" he asked suddenly. She froze. "How did you know?" "I guess," he said, releasing her. "I saw a stranger asking about Sarah Lynn. Said her brother sent him." Chloe bit her lip. Mason knew she was hiding, but he didn't know the PI was actually looking for Chloe. This misunderstanding. Maybe she could use it. I don't want to see him," she said, lowering her head, her voice trembling. "My brother. He's too controlling." Mason's expression softened instantly. "Understand. Come with me." He took her hand and led her through a series of alleys to a 2-story Victorian house. A small sign hung by the door. "Liam Marshall, Architectural Design. This is the place I'm leasing. You can stay on the 2nd floor," he said, unlocking the door. "You can hide here. I'll go check out the situation in the square." Chloe hesitated. Go home with Mason? It was too dangerous. But the PI was right there. "Thank you," she finally said, following him inside. The studio was simple. A large drafting table, a few chairs, and some sketches pinned to the wall. A small kitchenette was tucked into a corner, and a staircase led to the 2nd floor. "Have a seat. Can I get you something to drink?" he asked. "Just water." He poured 2 glasses and handed one to her. "This detective, he was really sent by your brother?" Chloe clutched the glass, spinning her web of lies. "Yes. My brother doesn't approve of my boyfriend. He wants to drag me back home." "Boyfriend?" Mason raised an eyebrow. "A guy from college," she pressed on. "My brother thinks he's not good enough for our family." Mason's expression turned strange. "Sounds like your brother is a tyrant." "He is. A total tyrant," she nodded, thinking that if her father heard this, he'd have an aneurysm. Mason stood up. "I'll go check the square. Lock the door behind me." After he left, Chloe let out a long breath and started looking around. The drafting table was covered in beautiful, clean-lined sketches of Havenwood landscapes. She hadn't known he could draw so well. The staircase creaked as she climbed to the 2nd floor. The bedroom was neater than she'd expected. A single bed, a desk, a closet. On the desk were several architecture books and a laptop, and on the nightstand was a picture frame. Chloe picked it up and almost dropped it. It was her and Mason, their official engagement photo. She was wearing a blush pink gown, her smile strained. He looked calm, unreadable. Why would he keep this? Her heart pounded. Stranger still, the frame was slightly worn at the edges, as if it were handled often. The front door opened downstairs. Chloe quickly put the frame back and tiptoed down. "What's the situation?" she asked as Mason walked in. "He's gone," Mason said, taking off his jacket. "But he said he'd keep looking. He's planning to check the local inns tomorrow." Chloe twisted her fingers. "I have to find a new place to stay." "You can stay here," he said. "There's a guest room upstairs." Her eyes widened. "Live with you." "I'll sleep in the studio," he said, pointing to a folded cot near the drafting table. "It's safe here. And besides," he paused, "I think it's time we had a talk." Her throat went dry. Did he know? About what? About? He took a step closer. "Why you've been pretending you don't know who I am." The air crackled. She could hear her own frantic heartbeat. I don't know what you're talking about." "Chloe," he He said her name softly. We both know who we are. Her legs gave out, and she sank into a chair. The charade was over. When did you recognize me? The second I saw you, he said, leaning against the table. You're a terrible liar, Sarah Lynn. She wanted to argue, but instead, she laughed. It was all so absurd. They were like two terrible actors in a play no one was watching. Then why did you play along? He shrugged. You looked like you were having fun. I didn't want to spoil it. You're an ass, she said, but there was no real heat in it. He smiled. Takes one to know one, runaway bride. They looked at each other and, at the same time, started laughing. The tension that had been building for days finally broke, and Chloe realized she'd been holding her breath the entire time. So, she took a deep breath. Are you really just here to get away from it all? Partly, he said, pouring her another glass of water. But mostly, I came to find you. She almost choked. Find me? Why? A lot of reasons, he said, his expression turning serious. But the main one is I want to know why you ran. She looked down at her glass. I thought it was obvious. I don't believe in arranged marriages. But you didn't even give me a chance to get to know you, he said softly. You just wrote me off. She had no response. He was right. From the beginning, she'd labeled him as her father's puppet, never considering he might be a person with his own thoughts and feelings. And you? She countered. Why did you sell the condo? Because it was your father's money, he said simply. I don't want to owe him anything. She looked up, surprised. My mom said it was her personal money. On paper, Mason said with a sneer. In reality, it was your father funneling it through her to control me. Flashes of memory went through Chloe's mind. Her father's constant criticism of Mason, her mother's hesitant expressions, Mason's silence at family gatherings. She suddenly realized this marriage was far more complicated than she had ever imagined. So, you didn't leave because you were heartbroken? He smiled. Heartbroken? Of course. Not because I lost a marriage, but because you thought I was your father's accomplice. A sharp pain went through her chest. She had always seen herself as the only victim, never once considering Mason's perspective. I'm sorry, she whispered. He shook his head. Don't be. We were both wrong. He glanced out the window. It's getting late. You should stay here tonight. We'll figure out a plan tomorrow. Chloe nodded. Then a thought occurred to her. That detective, was he really looking for me? Yes, Mason said, his expression grim. Sent by your father. But don't worry, I've already sent him on a wild goose chase. How? He smiled mysteriously. I told him that Sarah Lynn has an identical twin sister who works in the next town over. Chloe couldn't help but laugh again. It was all so ridiculous, but somehow, being with Mason made even being on the run feel less terrifying. Are you hungry? He asked. I can make some pasta. You cook. A basic survival skill, he said, walking to the kitchenette. Architects work late. Can't live on takeout forever. Chloe watched him go, realizing she had never truly known this man. In Chicago, he was Charles Davenport's future son-in-law. In Havenwood, he was just Leah Marshall, a man who could fix pipes, sort coffee cups, and make pasta. And she was starting to think she liked this version of him a lot more. ####. Morning sunlight streamed through the thin curtains, and Chloe blinked at the unfamiliar ceiling for a few seconds before remembering where she was. The guest room in Mason's studio. The mattress was as hard as a rock, and the pillows smelled faintly of laundry detergent. She fumbled for her phone. 23 new messages from Mia. Are you insane? Living with him? I checked the records. Mason Hayes signed a 3-year lease on that building. Chloe, are you alive? Chloe sighed and typed back, alive. Not murdered. Not seduced. Don't worry. Just as she hit send, she heard the clatter of pots and pans from downstairs, followed by a muffled shit. She couldn't help but smile as she tiptoed down the stairs. Mason was in the small kitchen, his back to her, wearing a white t-shirt and jeans, his hair a mess. He was frantically trying to flip something in a skillet. A piece of charcoal? Are you murdering breakfast? She asked, leaning against the doorframe. Mason spun around, nearly launching the pan across the room. You're awake. He held up the spatula sheepishly. I was trying to make scrambled eggs. Those are scrambled eggs? Chloe peered into the pan at the blackened lump. I thought you were performing some kind of alchemy. The tips of his ears turned red. I'm usually better with pasta. Chloe laughed and took the spatula from him. Move over, Rook. She turned off the heat and scraped the eggs into the trash. Do you have any flour? Flour. He blinked. I think so. Maybe. 10 minutes later, Chloe had unearthed flour, eggs, and half a package of bacon from the surprisingly well-stocked pantry. Mason stood by like a chastened child, occasionally handing her a bowl or a whisk. You know how to cook? He asked. A basic survival skill, she said, mimicking his tone from the night before. Even heiresses take a few cooking classes. She expertly whisked the eggs and flour, her movements fluid. Though my father's intention was for me to learn how to bake pastries to impress my future in-laws. Mason chuckled. Looks like another one of his plans backfired. She poured the batter into the hot skillet, and the delicious scent of pancakes filled the small kitchen. Do you do this often? Do what? Act all compliant on the surface, but secretly rebel underneath, she said, flipping a golden brown pancake. Playing the good little boy for my dad, while you're actually. Actually what? He asked, stepping closer, his breath ghosting over her ear. A bad boy. Her hand trembled, and she nearly botched the flip. He smelled of aftershave and morning sun, a combination that reminded her of their accidental embrace in the alley. Pancakes are ready, she said, trying to sound nonchalant as she slid them onto a plate, pointedly ignoring the heat rising in her cheeks. Here. He took the plate and took a bite, his eyes lighting up. This is amazing. Of course it is, she said, lifting her chin proudly. A series of frantic knocks on the front door cut her off. Mason frowned, put down his plate, and went to answer it. Chun stood on the doorstep, his face flushed. Liam, Sarah, thank God you're both here, he said, panting. We have a major crisis. Chloe and Mason exchange a look. What is it? The food festival. It's today at noon. Chun waved a flyer in the air. Old man Hemlock came down with appendicitis, and his partner has food poisoning. Our town has no one to compete. Chloe was completely lost. What competition? The annual Havenwood Food Festival. Chun was practically hopping with anxiety. We've been champions 3 years running. If we pull out now, those smug jerks from Pine Ridge will never let us hear the end of it. Mason looked even more confused than Chloe. So you two have to represent Havenwood. Chun grabbed both of their hands. You're the only outsiders in town with sophisticated palates. You have to win. Chloe opened her mouth to refuse, but Chun's eyes were already welling up with tears. The grand prize is $5,000. If you win, it's all yours. Mason raised an eyebrow at Chloe. Need some cash, runaway bride? Shut up, she hissed, then turned to Chun. What are the rules? An hour later, Chloe and Mason stood on a makeshift stage in the town square, facing 100 pairs of expectant eyes, each holding a slip of paper with the rules. 1 hour, 3 courses, using only the ingredients provided. Chloe read aloud. The judges will score based on creativity, taste, and couples chemistry. What the hell? Mason leaned over to look at her paper. The host, the local elementary school teacher, spoke into the microphone. This year, we've added a special couples category for a little extra fun. We're not. Chloe started to protest, but Mason clamped a hand over her mouth. Don't blow our cover, he whispered in her ear. There's a stranger in the crowd. Could be the PI. Chloe followed his gaze and saw a man in a dark trench coat standing at the edge of the crowd, taking pictures with his phone. She immediately shut her mouth and forced a smile at the host. All right, let the competition begin. With the host's signal, the other 5 couples rushed the ingredient table. Mason held Chloe back. What's the plan? You chop, I cook, she said quickly. 3 courses, appetizer, main, dessert. Got it. The ingredients were limited. Basic vegetables, some meat, eggs, flour, spices. Chloe quickly grabbed what she needed, and Mason, like a professional sous chef, followed behind, picking up supplementary items she'd missed. Back at their station, Mason started prepping the ingredients without a word. Chloe snuck a glance at his knife skills. Clean, precise, the carrots julienned as uniformly as if they'd come out of a machine. Did they teach knife skills in cooking class, too? She muttered. Architectural model making, he said without looking up. Precision down to the millimeter. The appetizer was Chloe's idea, bacon-wrapped asparagus with a special dipping sauce. She handled the sauce while Mason prepped the vegetables. They worked in near-perfect sync. Halfway through, the host shouted. For the main course, Chloe had decided on pan-seared chicken, but when she turned to get the chicken breasts, the plate was empty. Where's the chicken? She asked, panicking. Mason looked up, a picture of innocence. You told me to prep it, so I chopped it. You chopped all of it? That was for all 3 courses. You weren't specific, he shrugged. Now what? Chloe took a deep breath and surveyed their remaining ingredients. Change of plans. Mince the chicken. We're making meatballs. Meatballs with what? With that. Chloe pointed to a basket of wild greens the other contestants had ignored. Sautéed purslane. Mason raised an eyebrow. You know your wild greens? My grandmother lived in the country, she said curtly, starting to mince the chicken. Quick, chop up some ginger. With 10 minutes left, dessert became a problem. They had plenty of flour and eggs, but the other teams had used all the sugar. A savory dessert? Mason suggested. Chloe shook her head. The judges are all seniors. They won't go for it. A light bulb went off. Honey. I saw honey at the ingredient table. Mason sprinted to get it. Chloe quickly mixed a simple batter for small crepes, while Mason made a quick fruit compote with honey and some remaining berries. 1 minute left. Chloe frantically plated the crepes. Mason drizzled the compote over them and garnished with a sprig of mint. Time's up. They both let out a sigh of relief, looking at their 3 dishes. They weren't as pretty as the other teams, but they smelled incredible. The judges, 3 elderly town residents, made their rounds, tasting each dish before conferring in hushed tones. Chloe was so nervous she was digging her nails into Mason's arm. And the winner is... The host opened the envelope. Representing Havenwood, Liam Marshall and Sarah Lynn. Chloe's eyes widened. We won. The crowd erupted in applause. Mason seemed surprised too, but recovered quickly, sweeping Chloe up in his arms and spinning her around. She let out a yelp, instinctively wrapping her arms around his neck. Put me down, she hissed in his ear. Play along. The detective is watching, he whispered back, a mischievous grin on his face. After receiving their certificate and an envelope with $5,000 in cash, they were surrounded by enthusiastic townspeople. Chun excitedly announced a victory party at the cafe that night. Attendance mandatory. We have to find a way to slip out, Chloe whispered to Mason. That PI's been watching us all day. He nodded. We'll play it by ear tonight. But their plan to play it by ear was quickly derailed by Chen's special champion's cocktail. By 8 p.m., the cafe was packed, and Mason had been plied with at least 5 glasses of a strange, brightly colored concoction. His eyes were starting to lose focus. Is he always such a lightweight? Chloe asked Chun. Beats me. Never seen him drink before, Chun said, pouring another glass. Here you go, Liam, bottoms up. Mason waved a hand and nearly slid off his chair. Chloe quickly steadied him. That's enough. He can't have any more. Ooh, getting protective, are we? Chun winked. All right, no more. You 2 lovebirds should get some rest. The night was cool by the time Chloe managed to drag Mason out of the cafe. He was a dead weight, leaning heavily on her. You look so lean, but you're heavy as a sack of bricks, she grunted, half carrying, half dragging him toward the studio. He suddenly lifted his head, his eyes glassy. Chloe, what? You're really pretty, he slurred with a goofy grin, then promptly passed out on her shoulder. She rolled her eyes and continued her slow, arduous journey. Under the moonlight, their shadows merged into one awkward, stumbling creature. Back at the studio, it took all her strength to get him up the stairs and onto the bed. She was about to leave when he shot out a hand and grabbed her wrist. Don't go. Let go, you're drunk. I'm not drunk. He frowned, trying to focus. I'm an architect. She couldn't help but smile. Right? A very distinguished architect. He suddenly sat up, his expression deadly serious. Chloe, I have to tell you a secret. What secret? The money from the condo. He whispered conspiratorially. I put it all in a Swiss bank account. She raised an eyebrow. Is that so? It is. He nodded so emphatically he almost fell off the bed. Your dad. He thinks I just ran off with the cash. But really, I just didn't want to use his dirty money. Her heart skipped a beat. Why are you telling me this? Because. He tilted his head, his gaze suddenly clearing for a brief second. I like you. Then like a robot that had been powered down, he fell back onto the pillow and immediately started snoring. Chloe stood frozen. What did he just say? He liked her? Was it the truth? Or just drunken rambling? She shook her head, deciding not to overthink it. After pulling a blanket over him, she noticed his phone had slipped out of his pocket. She picked it up to place it on the nightstand, but accidentally hit the power button. The screen lit up, and Chloe gasped. The lock screen was a photo of her working at the coffee shop. It was clearly a candid shot, taken from a distance, but it was surprisingly beautiful. What the hell? She tried to swipe open the phone, but required a passcode. She hesitated, then typed in Mason's birthday. Incorrect. She thought for a moment, then typed in her own birthday. The phone unlocked. Creeper, she muttered, but her curiosity got the better of her. She opened his photo gallery. It was mostly pictures of buildings and design sketches, but there was one locked folder titled Project Nightingale. Biting her lip, she typed in her birthday again. It opened. The folder was filled with pictures of her. From the day she ran, at the train station, at the inn, in the coffee shop, the library. There was even a picture of her talking to Mia outside the community pool. Mason! She was so angry she wanted to smash the phone on his head, but then she noticed the timestamps. The earliest photo was from 3 months before their engagement. That's impossible, she whispered, scrolling back, her heart pounding faster and faster. There were photos of her in Chicago, at the mall, at her favorite restaurant, her gym, even her nail salon. All moments she had no idea she was being photographed. The creepiest part was that the photos were clearly taken by different people, with varying angles and quality. She put down the phone and stared at the sleeping man for a long time. She thought she had orchestrated the perfect escape, but she had been under surveillance from the very beginning. Who was this man, really? And why had he done this? She tiptoed out of the bedroom and curled up on the sofa downstairs for the rest of the night. Her dreams were filled with Mason's eyes, sober, drunk, intense, calculating, watching her from every shadow, giving her no place to hide. The next morning, she was woken by footsteps on the stairs. She rubbed her eyes to see Mason descending, one hand pressed to his forehead, his face pale. "Morning," he said, his voice raspy. "How'd I end up upstairs?" "You don't remember?" she tested. He nodded miserably. "The last thing I remember is Chin's third cocktail." He looked at her. I didn't say anything weird, did I?" She looked him straight in the eye. "You said you put the condo money in a Swiss bank account." His hand visibly trembled, but his expression remained neutral. "You'd believe a drunk man's rambling? You also said you liked me." This time, Mason froze completely, his ears turning a shade of crimson she could see from across the room. I. She decided to go for the kill. "And I saw the pictures on your phone. You psycho stalker." The color drained from his face. He opened his mouth, closed it, then slumped down on the stairs in defeat. "I can explain." "I'm listening." She crossed her arms. He took a deep breath. "Those pictures. I didn't take all of them." "Oh, you have accomplices?" "Detectives," he said, rubbing his temples. "Hired by your father." She frowned. "What?" "From the day we were first introduced, your father had us both followed." Mason gave a bitter laugh. "I just hacked into the detectives' cloud storage and copied their photos." "Why?" "Because." He looked up at her, his expression complex. "I wanted to know the real you. Not the perfect heiress at the galas, but the everyday Chloe." Her heart skipped a beat. "Then why did you keep them?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, he asked softly, "Do you really not remember the first time we met?" Chloe was stunned. She'd always assumed it was at the formal introduction arranged by her father. 3 years ago. "The architecture school's graduate exhibition at IIT," he said softly. "You were there representing your family's foundation, a sponsor. You were wearing a red dress, and you almost slipped by the fountain. I caught you." She searched her memory, but it was only a vague, fuzzy impression. And he smiled faintly. "I never forgot. Later, when your father approached me about an introduction to his daughter, I saw your picture and immediately said yes." She didn't know whether to be shocked or touched. "So you really do like me?" He stood up and walked over to her. "Things said while drunk don't count." He gently brushed his thumb against her cheek. "When I'm ready to tell you properly, you'll know." She slapped his hand away. "Don't change the subject. Those pictures, I'll delete them." And the detective, already handled, he headed for the kitchen. "Yesterday, I gave him the $5,000 from the festival. He agreed to go back and tell your father he found no trace of Chloe Davenport here." Her eyes widened. "You used our prize money to bribe him?" "Our prize money?" He raised an eyebrow. "I thought that was payment for my services." A certain someone seemed to be enjoying being swept off her feet yesterday. She grabbed a throw pillow from the sofa and hurled it at him. "Go to hell, Mason." He caught it easily, laughing, but his eyes were impossibly tender. In that moment, Chloe realized the cat-and-mouse game between them had fundamentally changed. And to her own surprise, she couldn't wait to see what happened next. ####. Sarah Lynn, mail for you. Chloe looked up from a half-finished latte to see the local mailman, a cheerful man named Dave, standing in the doorway of the cafe, waving a crisp manila envelope. She wiped her hands on her apron and took it, immediately recognizing the wax seal with the Davenport Industries logo, her father's signature for formal correspondence. "Thanks," she managed, her heart starting to pound. Dave lingered, his curiosity piqued. "You know someone at Davenport Industries? That's a huge company back in Chicago." "A distant relative," Chloe lied, stuffing the envelope into her apron pocket. "Please don't mention it to anyone." Dave made a zipping motion across his lips and went on his way. Chloe scanned the cafe. Mason wasn't here. He'd said he was driving to the next town for some architectural supplies. Only Chun and 2 regulars were inside, none of whom had noticed the exchange. She slipped into the back room, locked the door, and tore open the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a single sheet of heavy cardstock, bearing her father's sharp, familiar handwriting. "Chloe, this is your last chance. Return home within 1 week to meet Mr. Leo Sterling. If you refuse, you will be permanently disowned. And don't think I can't find you. My investigator has confirmed you are in Havenwood. Father." Tucked behind the note was a dossier on Mr. Leo Sterling, 28 years old, sole heir to Sterling Properties, a Cambridge graduate. The man in the photo wore a tailored suit and a smile so perfect it looked like it had been drawn with a protractor. Chloe's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the paper. How had her father found her? Hadn't the PI been paid off? Had Mason lied to her? She pulled out her phone, about to call him, when the back door burst open. Chloe hastily hid the letter behind her back as Mia rushed in, looking frantic. "Chloe, it's bad." Mia grabbed her by the shoulders. "Your dad sent people to my house." "What?" "Two guys in black suits. Said they were from Davenport's legal department." Mia's face was pale. "They asked my parents if they knew where you were and threatened to sue me for aiding a kidnapping." A knot of ice formed in Chloe's stomach. Her father was playing for keeps. "What did your parents say?" "They said they had no idea, of course." Mia rolled her eyes. "But my mom is freaking out. She told me to find you and tell you to—" "Well, tell me what?" "To get lost and stop dragging our family into your mess," Mia finished in a small voice. It felt like a physical blow. She knew Mia's mother had never been her biggest fan, but she hadn't expected to be cut off so brutally. "I'm so sorry, Mia. I've put you in a terrible position," she whispered. "I'll leave Havenwood right away." "Where will you go?" "I don't know. As far away as possible." Chloe untied her apron. "Can you tell Chen for me? Say it's a family emergency." Mia grabbed her wrist. "Wait, aren't you going to tell Mason?" Chloe bit her lip. "He probably told my dad where I was." "No way," Mia said firmly. "I did some digging. Mason and your dad are not on the same team. In fact, they have bad blood." Chloe frowned. "What kind of bad blood?" "I'm not sure, but my friend's cousin who works at Davenport said Mason once publicly opposed one of your dad's biggest development projects. They apparently had a huge fight about it in a board meeting." That was news to her. Chloe had always assumed Mason was her father's lapdog. "Look, I think you could trust him," Mia said, pulling out her wallet and pressing a wad of cash into Chloe's hand. "Here, just in case." Chloe's eyes burned. "Mia, don't get sappy," Mia said, patting her cheek. "Now, go pack. I'll keep watch." Chloe nodded. Just as she turned to go, the back door opened again. It was Mason, holding a paper bag from a hardware store, a light sheen of sweat on his forehead. "What secret meeting is this?" he asked, raising an eyebrow at their tense expressions. Mia and Chloe exchanged a look. "Just tell him," Mia said finally. "I'll stand guard outside." After Mia left, Mason locked the door and turned to Chloe. "What's happened?" She silently handed him her father's letter. He read it quickly, his expression growing darker with every word. "The PI sold us out?" she asked. Mason shook his head. "Impossible. I ran a background check on him. He wouldn't dare. Then how did my dad find me? It's possible he didn't." Mason pulled out his phone and showed her an email. "Look at this." Chloe took the phone. The screen displayed a financial news headline. Davenport Industries facing liquidity crisis. Multiple projects at risk of halting. The date was from 3 days ago. "I don't understand." "Your father isn't desperate to find his daughter. He's desperate for a bailout," Mason analyzed calmly. "Sterling Properties can provide that. That's why he's forcing you back into another engagement." A horrible thought crossed her mind. He wouldn't have let me get away with canceling our wedding if he wasn't already in trouble, would he? Mason's grim expression was all the confirmation she needed. "That bastard." Chloe slammed her fist on the prep table. "I'm nothing but a bargaining chip to him." Mason gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Calm down. Anger won't solve anything." "Then what will?" she snapped, shrugging off his hand. "Running away again?" "I'm packing my bags right now." Again, he sighed. "Where to this time? Alaska? International waters? I don't know. Anywhere as far away from him as possible." To her surprise, he smiled. You never change." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Your first instinct when faced with a problem is to run," he said, shaking his head. "First from a wedding, now from the country. What's next? Muffs?" She was speechless. He was right. She had been running. But what else was she supposed to do? "I have a suggestion," he said suddenly. "What?" "We get married. For real." Chloe stared at him. "What?" "It solves everything," he said, his voice as calm as if he were discussing a blueprint. "We become a legal entity. Your father can't force you to marry someone else, and my claim to the condo money becomes ironclad." Warning bells went off in her head. You're just doing this for the money." "Partly," he admitted without shame, "but mostly to get you out of this mess." "No, thank you," she said with a cold laugh. "I'd rather go prospect for gold in the Yukon than get into a sham marriage." He seemed to have anticipated her refusal. "Do you have a better plan?" Just then, Chen's voice called from the front. "Sarah, someone's here to see you." Chloe and Mason both tensed. "Who is it?" Chloe called through the door. "So she's your aunt." They exchanged a confused look. She didn't have an aunt. Mason motioned for her to stay put, and went out himself. Chloe pressed her ear to the door and heard a familiar, elegant voice. "Where's Chloe?" "I'm her mother." Chloe's legs went weak, and she nearly collapsed. Her mother? Here? In Havenwood? Forgetting all caution, she threw open the door and rushed out. In a corner of the cafe, a woman in sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat was looking around anxiously. Despite the disguise, Chloe recognized her mother's graceful silhouette instantly. "Mom!" The woman turned and pulled Chloe into a fierce hug. "Thank God." Chun tactfully retreated to the kitchen, and Mia stood guard at the front door. Mason poured a cup of tea, placed it on the table, and then quietly stepped away. "How did you find me?" Chloe whispered. "Your father had the pee. I tracked Mia's online orders," her mother said, taking off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red and swollen. "Chloe, you have to come back with me." "Never." Chloe pulled away. "I am not marrying some Leo Sterling." "It's not about the marriage," her mother hissed. "It's about saving your father. The company is about to go bankrupt. We have creditors camped out on our lawn." Chloe looked at Mason in shock. He seemed just as surprised. "The situation is much worse than what's been reported," her mother said, dabbing her eyes. "Your father has mortgaged the house, all our assets, if he doesn't get the capital injection from the Sterlings." "So he sells his daughter?" Chloe's voice trembled. "It's not selling, it's—" Her mother's eyes landed on Mason, and her voice dropped to a wary whisper. "Who is he?" "Liam Marshall," Chloe said before Mason could speak. "My boyfriend." Mason raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Her mother's expression shifted from surprise to suspicion, finally settling on a look of complex understanding. "I see." She turned to Mason. "Young man, could you give us a moment alone?" Mason nodded, and, with a glance at Mia, they both stepped outside. As soon as the door closed, her mother grabbed her hand. "Are you serious with this, Liam?" "Of course," Chloe said, committing to the lie. "We're getting married." "Don't be ridiculous," her mother snapped. "Do you know anything about him? His family? What does he do?" "He's an architect." Her mother stared at her for a few seconds, then smiled. "Chloe, darling, you always blink your right eye when you lie. You've done it since you were a little girl." Chloe was speechless. "Listen to me," her mother sighed. "I'm not here to drag you back. I'm here to warn you." "Warn me?" "Your father has filed a petition with the court. If you don't return in 1 week, he's going to have you declared mentally incompetent and gain legal guardianship over you." She pulled a document from her purse. "Once he does that, he can legally lock you away until you agree to the marriage." The room started to spin. Her father would go that far. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm your mother," she said, stroking Chloe's cheek. "I know you're not happy. And that Mason Hayes. He's no saint, but he's a damn sight better than Leo Sterling." Chloe's eyes widened. "You know Liam is Mason?" "Of course," her mother said with a faint smile. "Who do you think made sure the deed to the Waterford condo was in his name alone?" The pieces clicked into place. Her mother's quiet defense of Mason, her father's strange comments about the condo, Mason calling it dirty money. "You too. You conspired to trick my father." "Not trick, protect," her mother said, standing up. "Your father has become more and more paranoid over the years. I had to create a safety net." She checked her watch. "I have to go. My driver is waiting." "Mom." Chloe didn't know what to say. 1 week, Chloe, her mother said, putting her sunglasses back on. "Either go back and marry Leo Sterling, or—" She glanced meaningfully toward the door. "Find a better solution." After her mother left, Chloe sat in a daze. The door opened quietly, and Mason came back in. "How did it go?" he asked. She robotically repeated her mother's warning. When she finished, Mason's expression was unnervingly calm. "So," he summarized, "you have 1 week to decide whether to go back and get married, or to get married to me." "That's not a choice," she said, exasperated. "Both options are terrible." He surprised her by laughing. "There's a third option." "What?" "We get married for real." Chloe almost fell out of her chair. "Are you insane?" "It's more reliable than a sham marriage," he shrugged. "At least we wouldn't have to pretend to be in love." "We're not in love." He didn't argue, just watch her quietly. And Chloe suddenly realized she wasn't entirely sure that was true. At least, not on her end. I need time to think," she finally said. He nodded. "What do you want for dinner?" "I'll go get groceries." She stared at him, bewildered. In the face of this monumental crisis, he was worried about dinner? "Whatever." "Whatever is not on the menu," he insisted. She suddenly lost her temper. "Can you be serious for 1 second? We're talking about the rest of my life. And people have to eat," he said calmly. "The more critical the situation, the more important it is to maintain a normal routine. I learned that in the Army." Her eyes widened. "You were in the Army?" "Did a tour after college," he said offhandedly. "So dinner?" "Braised short ribs." She answered automatically, then shook her head. No, we were talking about braised short ribs, garlic mashed potatoes, and roasted asparagus, he said, already heading for the door. I'll go to the market. You get some rest. Chloe watched him go, torn between wanting to punch him and wanting to hug him. How could he be thinking about recipes at a time like this? After he left, Mia slipped back in. So, she asked urgently. Chloe quickly explained the situation. When she finished, Mia's eyes were wide. So you either marry some stranger or you marry Mason? That's the easiest choice in the world. Easy. Of course you pick Mason. Mia slapped the table. He's handsome, he can cook, and he's willing to go up against Charles Davenport for you. Chloe put her head in her hands. Mia, this isn't a beauty pageant. Do you like him? The question stopped her. Did she like Mason? She hated his arrogance, his infuriating calm, his knack for always being one step ahead. But those were the same qualities that gave her a strange sense of security in the middle of this crisis. I don't know, she admitted. Then take the gamble, Mia said firmly. It's a hell of a lot better than marrying that Leo, whatever his name is. As if on cue, the sky outside darkened, and a flash of lightning was followed by a deafening clap of thunder. Rain began to pour down in sheets. Damn, I've got to go, or I'll miss the last bus back, Mia said, looking out the window. She gave Chloe a quick hug. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. But just remember, she pointed to Mason's figure jogging back through the downpour. That man is getting soaked to the bone for your short ribs. After Mia left, Mason entered, dripping wet. Storm warnings in effect. The whole town might lose power. As if to prove his point, the lights in the cafe flickered and died. In the darkness, the room was illuminated only by flashes of lightning. Where's Chun? Chloe asked, checking the circuit breaker. Mason fumbled in the dark to put down his grocery bag. We should get back to the studio. It's not safe here. Just then, a loud crash came from overhead, followed by Chen's panicked shout. The roof is leaking. Sarah, get the tarp and buckets from the storage shed. Chloe found her phone and turned on the flashlight. Mason, having already shed his wet jacket, took it from her. I'll go. You help Chun. I'm going with you, she insisted. You don't know where anything is. They ran through the rain to the small shed in the backyard. Just as they pushed open the door, a massive gust of wind slammed it shut behind them. The shed was cluttered with junk. Chloe, working from memory, found the tarp and buckets just as the roof above them let out an ominous groan. Look out! Mason yanked her out of the way just as a large section of the ceiling collapsed, landing exactly where she had been standing. Chloe's heart was hammering against her ribs. Mason's arm was wrapped tightly around her, their bodies pressed together in the dark. Thank you, she whispered. He didn't let go. Chloe, about the marriage thing. Now is not the time. She tried to pull away. It's exactly the time, he said, his voice steady over the roar of the storm. Listen to me. I don't care if it's real or fake, but I know one thing. I will not let you go back to that man-eating family of yours. She looked up at him. A flash of lightning illuminated his face, and his eyes were burning with an intensity that almost scorched her. Why? She whispered. Because. He took a deep breath. Because I'm in love with you, damn it. I have been since the first time I saw you at that exhibition 3 years ago. Chloe's world stood still. The rain, the thunder, Chen's distant shouts. It all faded away, leaving only the sound of Mason's breathing and her own deafening heartbeat. You never said. I said it 1,000 times, he said with a wry smile. In my own way, fixing your phone, sitting through those boring galas with you, even letting you run from our wedding. She thought of the photos, of the moments he had captured without her knowledge. It wasn't surveillance. It was adoration. So the condo. That was me declaring war on your father, he admitted. I knew it was his money, so I made a point of selling it to show him I wasn't another one of his puppets. Suddenly, so many things made sense. Why he had always been so distant with her father, why her mother had secretly helped him, why he had liquidated the property the first chance he got. You used me, she said softly. At first, yes, he admitted without hesitation. But then, a flash of lightning revealed the raw honesty in his eyes. Then I realized you and I are the same. We're both fighting back, just in different ways. You run, and I wait. She didn't know how to respond. His words were a mirror, reflecting a truth about herself she had never wanted to admit. She was always running, from her family, from responsibility, from her own feelings. We should get back, she finally said, her voice softer than she intended. He released her, but held her gaze. Consider my offer. A real marriage, not a fake one. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no. She grabbed the tarp and buckets and ran back into the storm. Mason was right behind her, two fugitives running through the rain. Back in the cafe, Chun was frantically trying to catch the leaks. The three of them managed to get the tarp set up, but the rain was too heavy. The first floor was already flooding. "Can't stay here tonight," Chun said, looking defeated. "Sarah, you'll have to bunk with Liam." Chloe started to protest, but Mason had already grabbed her bag. "Let's go." The water's rising. The street outside had become a shallow river. They waded back to the studio, both soaked to the bone. Mason found dry towels and a change of clothes for her. "You shower first. I'll make some ginger tea." Chloe stood under the hot water, letting it wash away the chill from her body and the chaos from her mind. Mason's confession had shattered all her defenses. He loved her for 3 years. It was insane, but it also explained everything. She emerged from the bathroom wearing his clothes, an oversized t-shirt and sweatpants. The studio was lit by candles. Mason was at the small stove, the warm, yellow light softening the sharp angles of his face. "Tea's ready," he said, handing her a steaming mug. To ward off a cold, she took the mug, their fingers brushing for a brief moment. She sipped the spicy sweet liquid, feeling it warm her from the inside out. "Mason," she said, putting down the mug and looking him in the eye, "if we got married, a real marriage, would you respect my choices?" His expression turned serious. "What choices? Like, if I didn't want to have kids right away, or if I want to keep working?" "Of course," he said without hesitation. "You'd be my wife, not my property." Her heart sped up. "And what about finances?" "Separate assets, with a joint account for shared expenses," he answered smoothly, as if he'd thought it all through. "You can keep using the name Sarah Lynn until you're ready to be Chloe Davenport again." She was astonished by his thoroughness. "You've planned all this out?" "I've been planning it since the day you ran away," he said with a sad smile. "The details just keep changing." The rain outside was subsiding, but the candlelight still danced on the walls, mirroring their own unsteady hearts. Chloe looked at Mason, his features softened by the flickering light, and suddenly realized that what she had been searching for might be this man right here, someone who knew everything about her, and still chose to stay. "I need one more night to think about it," she finally said. He nodded and pointed upstairs. "You take the bed. I'll take the sofa." As she started up the stairs, she turned back. "Mason, if we did this, would you regret it?" He blew out the last candle, and in the darkness, his voice was startlingly clear. "The only thing I regret in my entire life is not stopping you from running away in the first place." In the darkness, Chloe's eyes filled with tears. She turned and went upstairs. That night, the storm washed over Havenwood, and it also washed away the high, protective walls she had built around her heart. #####. Morning sunlight sliced through a gap in the curtains, and Chloe blinked, momentarily disoriented. She was in the guest bed at Mason's studio, wearing his t-shirt, her mind still reeling from the storm, the ginger tea, and the proposal. He proposed. A real marriage. She sat bolt upright, her hair a tangled mess. Was she dreaming? The smell of coffee and the sound of a spatula hitting a pan drifted up from downstairs. Chloe ran a hand through her hair and tiptoed down. Mason was at the stove, his back to her, frying an egg. He wore gray sweatpants and a white tank top, the muscles in his back shifting as he cooked. "Morning," she said from the doorway, her voice raspy. He turned, a faint smile on his lips. "Sleep well." "Okay." She took the mug of coffee he offered, carefully avoiding his eyes. About last night. "Have you made a decision?" he asked, sliding the egg onto a plate, his tone as casual as if they were discussing the weather. She stared in her coffee cup. "I need more information. Such as, if we got married, where would we live?" She looked up. "You can't stay in Havenwood forever." He set the plates on the small dining table. "I have a job offer in Singapore. We can go anytime." "Singapore?" Her eyes widened. "When did you apply for that?" 6 months ago, he said, slicing into his egg. "The plan was to take you with me after the wedding." A pang went through her chest. Mason had had a plan all along, a fresh start that didn't involve her father. And she had ruined it with her escape. "So, now what?" "The plan hasn't changed," he said, taking a bite of toast. "It's just shifted from a honeymoon to an escape." She couldn't help but smile. "Sounds like a crime thriller." "Life is a poorly written crime thriller," he said, sipping his coffee. "And we're both the victims and the criminals." Before she could respond, a loud, insistent banging echoed from the front door. Mason stood, frowning. He peered through the peephole, and his face immediately hardened. "What is it?" Chloe whispered. He turned to her. "Your father is here." The fork dropped from her hand, clattering against the plate. "What?" With 4 bodyguards, Mason said, impossibly calm. "He'll have the back door covered, too." Chloe jumped up, her eyes darting around the room. "We have to run." There's nowhere to run. He grabbed her wrist. Listen to me. No matter what happens, stick to the plan. What PL? The door flew open with a splintering crash. Charles Davenport stood in the doorway, a towering figure of fury, flanked by 4 men in dark suits. He looked older than she remembered, the silver at his temples more pronounced, but the cold fury in his eyes was unchanged. "I've found you," he said, his voice like scraping ice. Chloe instinctively shrank behind Mason, a move that seemed to enrage her father even more. He strode into the room as one of his men shut and blocked the door. "Chloe, get your things. You're coming home." "I'm not going back," she said, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "I won't marry Leo Sterling." Her father let out a cold laugh. "That's not up to you." He turned his glare on Mason. "As for you, boy, do you have any idea what the penalty for fraud is?" Mason raised an eyebrow. "What fraud?" "Obtaining property under false pretenses and then liquidating it for profit," Charles said, pulling a document from his pocket. "The D. Has already opened a case file." Chloe snatched the paper and scanned it. This is insane. You were the one who forced the marriage." "Can you prove that?" her father sneered. "Because I have engagement party photos, a signed gift letter for the property, and the records of the sale. It's an open and shut case." She was shaking with rage. You're despicable." But Mason was a picture of calm. "Mr. Davenport, let's not waste time. What do you want?" "2 things," he said, holding up 2 fingers. 1. Chloe comes home and marries Leo. 2. You return the money from the sale and sign a non-disclosure agreement. "An NDA?" Chloe looked at Mason, confused. A small, dangerous smile touched Mason's lips. "Are you afraid I'll talk about Davenport Industries' creative accounting, Charles?" Her father's face went rigid. "What the hell are you talking about?" "Last year's 3rd quarter," Mason said, his tone conversational. "You falsified the progress reports on the Riverbend project by 30% to secure a $270 million line of credit from a bank. Shall I continue?" Chloe stared at Mason. How did he know that? Her father's expression shifted from rage to shock, then settled into a dangerous calm. "You think anyone will believe your word against mine?" "I have the original inspector's reports and time-stamped photographs," Mason shrugged. "It's more than enough for the SEC to launch a full investigation." Charles grabbed a water glass from the table and hurled it against the wall, where it shattered. "You set me up." Mason pulled Chloe behind him, shielding her from the flying glass. "The feeling is mutual." Just as the tension reached its breaking point, a commotion erupted outside, followed by a woman's sharp voice. "Let me in. I need to see Mason." Everyone froze. Mason frowned. "Ooh." The door was shoved open, and a young woman in a tight red dress burst in, her makeup flawless, her stomach slightly rounded. Her eyes found Mason, and tears immediately welled up. "Mason, I finally found you." She threw herself at him. "You can't just abandon our baby." Time seemed to stop. Chloe stared at the woman claiming to be pregnant with Mason's child, a roaring sound filling her ears. "Sophia?" Mason looked like he'd seen a ghost. "You're pregnant. 4 months," the woman Sophia sobbed. "It happened the night you left me. I've been looking for you everywhere." A triumphant smirk spread across Charles Davenport's face. "Well, it seems my daughter made the right choice in leaving you at the altar. Your character is truly impressive, Mr. Hayes." Chloe stood rooted to the spot. Was this real? Mason had an ex-girlfriend, and she was pregnant? What did that make his proposal last night? He pushed Sophia away and turned to Chloe. "Chloe, listen to me. I can explain." "Explain what?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Is she your ex? Is it your baby?" "No. We broke up months ago," he said, reaching for her hand. "That baby cannot be mine." Sophia cried harder. "How can you say that? You were drunk that night at my apartment." Charles scoffed. "Chloe, now you see this man for who he really is." She pulled her hand away from Mason's, her mind a chaotic mess. Who should she believe? Was his proposal last night genuine? Or had this all been a game? Then Mason laughed. It was a cold, chilling sound that made the hairs on Chloe's arm stand up. It was the laugh of a man who held all the cards. "Sophia," he said, turning to the weeping woman. "You say you're 4 months along?" "Yes," she sobbed. 4 months ago, that rainy night." "Interesting," he said, pulling out his phone. "Because 4 months ago, I was in Singapore for an architectural summit. I have the passport stamps to prove it." He pulled up a photo. "Here I am with the Singaporean Minister of Development at Marina Bay Sands, on the very night you claim I was at your apartment." The color drained from Sophia's face. I must have gotten the date wrong." "And it gets more interesting," Mason continued, scrolling through his phone. 3 months ago, you posted a photo of yourself in a bikini on Instagram. Your stomach was as flat as this table. He showed the phone to Chloe. And basic biology dictates that a woman who is 4 months pregnant is showing. Chloe looked at the picture. He was right. Sophia was showing a small bum now, but 3 months ago, she was perfectly flat. That's an old picture. Sophia stammered. Is it? He said coldly. Then let's go to the hospital right now and get an ultrasound. We can see exactly how far along you are. Sophia stopped crying. Her face twisted into a snarl. You bastard, Mason. She spun to face Charles. Mr. Davenport, don't let him fool you. He doesn't love your daughter. He's just using her to get back at you. Charles frowned. What are you talking about? He told me himself. Sophia shrieked. He only got close to Chloe to get revenge on you for driving his father out of business. He has a locked folder on his phone filled with pictures he took while stalking her. Chloe stared at Mason. She knew that part was true. She'd seen the photos. But to her utter shock, Mason smiled. She's right. I do have a locked folder of photos. He looked directly at Chloe. But it wasn't for revenge. It was because I'm in love with her. Her heart stopped. 3 years ago, at the IIT graduate exhibition, I saw Chloe for the first time, he said, his voice clear and strong. She was wearing a red dress, and she almost slipped by the fountain. I caught her, and from that moment, I knew she was the one. Chloe's lips trembled. Then why? Why didn't I just ask you out? He said with a sad smile. Because I was a broke, recent graduate, and your father was already lining up a parade of suitable heirs for you to marry. Charles snorted. Absurd. Later, your father approached me with his proposal. Mason continued. I knew he just wanted to use my architectural license for his own gain, but I said yes because it was the only way I could get close to you. Sophia screamed. He's lying. Mr. Davenport, he's putting on an act. Mason ignored her. Those photos, I hired people to take them because I wanted to know the real you, not the Davenport heiress, but the Chloe who spends her afternoons in the library. Tears welled in Chloe's eyes. She remembered the photos of herself, the focused look on her face while reading, the frown of concentration while attempting latte art, the unguarded smile as she fed a stray cat. Every moment captured with an authenticity that felt like love. That's enough. Charles roared. Chloe, come with me. This man is a pathological liar. She stood frozen, torn. Who could she trust? Her father? Mason? Her own heart? Suddenly, Mason dropped to one knee. In front of her furious father, his spurned ex, and 4 menacing bodyguards, he took her hand. Chloe, I know this is the worst possible time, but I'm asking you again. Will you marry me? Not a fake marriage. A real one. Her eyes widened. Are you crazy? Right now, he said, his gaze unwavering. In front of everyone. I want your father to know this was never about money or revenge. It was always about you. Preposterous. Charles raged. He motioned to his men. Get her. 2 bodyguards moved forward and grabbed Chloe's arms. Mason shot to his feet, placing himself between them and her. Don't you touch her. Mason! Chloe cried out in alarm. Chloe, answer me, he said, his eyes locked on hers. Yes or no? Tom stood still. She looked into his determined eyes, and suddenly, everything was clear. From a moment he'd walked back in her life at the cafe, she had fought it, but she had been undeniably drawn to him. The way he fixed pipes, the way he cooked, the ruthless way he outmaneuvered her father. All the pieces of him came together to form a man she couldn't help but love. Yes, she whispered, then louder for everyone to hear. Yes, I'll marry you. Her father's face turned purple with rage. You've been brainwashed, he yelled at the bodyguards. Take her, now. The men dragged them apart. Chloe struggled, crying out, Dad, you can't do this. We'll discuss this at home, he said, pulling her toward the door. In the chaos, Mason was pinned against the wall by the other 2 guards, but he shouted over the struggle. Davenport, don't forget about those documents. If you lay a hand on Chloe, they'll be on the SEC's desk by morning. Her father paused at the door and looked back with a cold smile. You think this is over? Boy, I will make you pay. I'm counting on it. Mason shot back. But you remember this. Chloe is my fiancée, and no one can change that. Chloe was shoved into a black luxury sedan waiting outside. Through the window, she saw Mason being escorted to another car. Just before they drove away, he looked at her and mouthed 2 words. Wait for me. The car sped away, the town of Havenwood shrinking in the rearview mirror. Chloe leaned back against the leather seat, silent tears streaming down her face. But this time, it wasn't a feeling of despair. This time, a small flame of hope was burning inside her. He was coming for her. She knew it. And this time, she wasn't going to run. ####. The iron gates of the Davenport estate clanged shut behind them, a sound of finality. Chloe was escorted by 2 bodyguards to her third-floor bedroom, where the door was promptly locked from the outside. She rushed to the window, watching the black sedan carrying Mason drive away and disappear down the tree-lined drive. "Miss Chloe, your father has requested that you freshen up and rest." The voice of the head butler, Mr. Carson, came through the door. "Dinner will be brought to your room." She didn't answer. She surveyed the room she had grown up in. The pale pink wallpaper, the white French provincial furniture, the vanity table lined with expensive perfumes. Nothing had changed in 3 years, yet it felt utterly alien, a beautifully appointed prison cell. She kicked off her shoes and fell onto the bed, burying her face in a pillow. Mason's last words, "Wait for me," echoed in her mind. Would he really come? How? Her father had clearly prepared for every contingency. Her phone had been confiscated, and the landline in her room was dead. She pulled back the curtains to see 2 guards patrolling the manicured lawn below. The sound of running water from her en-suite bathroom startled her. She pushed the door open to find the large, soaking tub already filled with hot water, rose petals floating on the surface. Scented candles and bath oils were arranged beside it. It was a gesture so bizarrely thoughtful it was menacing. "Chloe!" Her mother's voice came from the bedroom. "May I come in?" Chloe opened the door. Her mother stood there holding a tea tray, a worried smile on her face. 3 years had deepened the lines around her eyes, but she was as elegant as ever in a silk blouse and pearl earrings. "Mom," Chloe said, stepping aside. "Are you here to play the good cop?" Her mother set the tray down with a soft sigh. "I'm here to see my daughter." She stroked Chloe's hair. 3 years, not a single phone call. Chloe's eyes burned. "I'm sorry." "Silly girl." Her mother pulled her down to sit on the edge of the bed. "Your father is furious, but he's also desperate. The company situation is far worse than you can imagine." Chloe frowned. "How bad is it?" "Catastrophic," her mother whispered. "If he can't secure the funding from the Sterlings, he won't be able to make payroll next month." Chloe gasped. Davenport Industries was a billion-dollar company. How could this have happened? "He's been too aggressive for years," her mother said, shaking her head. "Leveraging every asset, borrowing against future projects. It looked impressive on paper, but the foundation was rotten." Chloe thought of Mason's accusation of financial fraud. Was Mason telling the truth? Did Dad really fake the progress reports? Her mother's expression was complicated. "That boy, he's much smarter than any of us gave him credit for." She paused. "Yes, he is proof. So he really did get close to me just to get revenge?" Chloe's voice trembled. Her mother gave her a long, meaningful look. "What do you think?" Chloe thought of Mason's eyes, of the secret photos, of his confession in the storm. "No, he wouldn't." "Then trust your judgment," her mother said, standing. "Take a warm bath. I'll have them send up your dinner." After her mother left, Chloe soaked in the tub, her mind a whirlwind. Who was Mason Hayes? A calculating avenger, or a man in love forced to play a dangerous game? The more she thought, the more confused she became. Dinner was her childhood favorite, filet mignon with truffle sauce. She ate without tasting a thing, her eyes fixed on the darkening sky outside. At 9 p.m., her father appeared. He stood in the doorway, impeccably dressed, holding a file. "Have you had time to think?" he asked without preamble. "Leo Sterling is coming for dinner tomorrow. I expect you to be on your best behavior." Chloe put down her fork. "Dad, does the company really need the Sterlings that badly?" His face hardened. "That is not your concern. But if what Mason said is true, if the fraud is exposed." "Shut up," he slammed his hand on the table. "What does that little punk know? His father was just as arrogant, and look where it got him. Bankrupt and dead." Chloe's eyes widened. "What? Mason's father? He killed himself." Her father seemed to realize his mistake. His expression darkened. "The point is, you will be charming tomorrow. Leo Sterling is a fine match, better than Mason ever was. You will like him." She clenched her fists. "I will not marry a stranger." "You don't have a choice," he sneered. "If you try to run again, I will make sure Mason Hayes rots in jail. Fraud, blackmail. He'll get at least 10 years. A chill went down her spine. He meant it. "Get some rest," her father said, turning to leave. "The stylist will be here at 10 a.m. The door was locked again. Chloe stood by the window, staring out at the moonlit garden she had escaped from 3 years ago. Now it was patrolled by guards and covered by security cameras. She tossed and turned all night, her dreams filled with Mason's face, one moment tender, the next calculating. The next morning, she was awoken by a knock. A maid brought breakfast and a brand-new Chanel dress. "Your father's selection for the day," she said. At 10 o'clock, the stylist arrived. For the next 3 hours, Chloe was poked, prodded, and painted like a doll. The woman in the mirror was stunning, but she felt like a stranger. At 3 p.m., the butler announced that their guest had arrived. Chloe took a deep breath and descended the grand staircase. In the drawing room, her father was laughing with a young man whose back was to the door. When he heard her footsteps, he turned. Chloe almost screamed. It was the man from Havenwood, the private investigator. "Chloe, my dear, come meet Leo Sterling," her father beamed. Leo extended a polite hand. "A pleasure to finally meet you, Miss Davenport." She shook his hand, her mind reeling. What was going on? How was the PI pretending to be Leo Sterling? "Leo just flew in from London," her father was saying. "He studied architecture at Cambridge. An alumnus of Mason's, in fact." Chloe nearly choked. An alumnus? This was too much of a coincidence. Unless she studied Leo more closely. He was well-dressed, but his mannerisms were slightly forced, his eyes occasionally darting toward the door as if he were waiting for a cue. "Do you enjoy traveling, Miss Davenport?" he asked. "I hear you've been all over." "Some," she answered cautiously. "Ah, I adore Singapore," he exclaimed. "So clean, so modern. Don't you agree?" "Ahem." Her father cleared his throat, cutting him off. "Leo, why don't you and Chloe take a walk in the garden? She adores the roses." She was almost certain now. This man was an imposter, sent by Mason. But her father was completely fooled. In the garden, while her father took a call, she cornered him. "Who are you, really?" He winked. "Your future husband, of course." "Cut the crap," she hissed. "You were the PI in Havenwood." He smiled. "You have a good memory, Miss Davenport. But for now, I prefer you remember me as Leo." "Did Mason send you?" "Shoo." He motioned for silence. "Your father is coming back." The rest of the afternoon was torture. Her father was clearly smitten with Leo, while the imposter kept dropping hints about Singapore, obviously trying to pass on a message. At dinner, she couldn't take it anymore. "Leo, you said you and Mason were at Cambridge together?" Silence fell over the table. Her father's glare was murderous. "Yes, that's right," Leo said calmly, "though he was a few years ahead of me. We didn't know each other well." "Is that so?" Chloe put down her silverware. "Then do you know where he is now?" "Chloe," her father snapped. But Leo just smiled. "I heard he was setting up his own firm. Somewhere in Singapore, I believe." Her father's face was a mask of fury. After dinner, he insisted Chloe walk Leo to his car. "Tell Mason," she whispered as they walked down the long driveway, "that I'm done with these games." He smiled. "He told me to tell you, 72 hours. "What does that mean?" "It means everything will be resolved in 72 hours, he said cryptically. "He asked that you be patient and refrain from doing anything impulsive. And if I don't, then he would be very disappointed," Leo said, opening his car door. "After all, he loves you very much." As his car pulled away, Chloe stood shivering in the cool night air. What was Mason's plan? Back in her room, she found her mother waiting. "So, you met Leo," she said. Chloe laughed coldly. "Mom, stop pretending. That wasn't Leo Sterling." Her mother's expression didn't flicker. "Oh, then who was it?" "One of Mason's men," Chloe said, staring her down. "You knew all along, didn't you?" Her mother stood and went to the window. "Your father has made a lot of enemies over the years," she said softly, "including the real Leo Sterling." Chloe's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "I mean," her mother turned, a mysterious smile on her face. "The real Leo Sterling isn't coming. There's one more act to this play tomorrow. Get some rest." After she left, Chloe was more confused than ever. Her mother was part of some grand plan, clearly on Mason's side. But her father remained clueless, lost in his fantasy of a corporate saving marriage. She lay in bed, the words 72 hours echoing in her mind. The next morning, the house was in an uproar. Her father was in his study, shouting and smashing things. Chloe learned from a maid that Leo Sterling had vanished, and the real Sterling properties had called to inform them that their son was, and had been, in Europe for the last 6 months. Chloe almost laughed. It was a brilliant, cruel move on Mason's part. But what came next? Around noon, the other shoe dropped. The SEC raided the Davenport Industries headquarters, seizing boxes of financial records. Before her father rushed off to the office, he ordered the guards to double the watch on her room. She watched his car speed away. She finally understood Mason's plan. He wasn't just saving her. He was systematically dismantling her father's power. The 72 hours had begun. That evening, her mother slipped into her room and handed her a burner phone. "From Mason. There's only one number in it. For emergencies." "Mom, what is going on?" "We're giving you your freedom," she said simply. "But we need you to do your part, which is—" "Wait. Wait for what?" "For your father to be too distracted to worry about you," she said cryptically. "It will be soon." On the third morning, the tension in the house was unbearable. Her father hadn't come home. The financial news was running a headline. Davenport Industries under investigation for massive financial fraud. Stock plummets 50%. Her father was shown being swarmed by reporters, his face ashen. The 72 hours were up. Mason's plan had worked. At noon, her mother rushed in. "It's time. Your father is being detained for questioning by the SEC. He won't be back until late tonight, if at all." She handed Chloe a bag. "Cash, your passport, and car keys. There's a car waiting for you in the garage." Chloe was stunned. "You want me to run?" "Not run," her mother corrected. "Go. To the man you love." Chloe's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, go now," her mother said, hugging her tightly. "Mason is waiting." Chloe changed into the clothes her mother had packed. Her mother led her down the service stairs to the garage, where an inconspicuous gray sedan was parked. "Remember," her mother said, her hands on Chloe's shoulders. "Whatever happens, no more running. Face it." Chloe hugged her mother one last time and got into the car. As she drove out of the estate, she didn't look back. This time, she wasn't escaping from something. She was driving toward it. The GPS was already set for a single destination, Havenwood, Oregon. She didn't know what she would find there, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid of the unknown. She pressed her foot on the accelerator. The game was over. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. Havenwood was quieter than she remembered. Chloe parked at the edge of town and walked toward Mason's studio. Night had fallen, and the streetlights cast long, lonely shadows. Chin's coffee shop had a closed sign in the window, its interior dark and empty. The studio was dark, too. Chloe's heart pounded as she stood on the porch. Her mother had said Mason was waiting, but clearly he wasn't here. She used the spare key he had given her and let herself in. The air inside was stale, smelling of dust. She flipped the light switch and gasped. The studio was completely empty. The drafting table, the chairs, the kitchenette supplies, all gone. All that remained were a few scattered papers on the floor and the faint outlines on the wall where his sketches had been. "Mason," she called out, her voice echoing in the hollow space. No answer. She ran upstairs. The bedroom was also bare, not even a mattress on the floor. Moonlight streamed through the uncurtained window, pooling like silver on the hardwood. Her legs gave out, and she sank to the floor. Had she been too late? Had he left? Or was this entire thing just another one of his games? She pulled out the burner phone her mother had given her and stared at the single contact. Her thumb hovered over the call button, but she couldn't bring herself to press it. What if he just used her to get his revenge and had already moved on? Bastard, she whispered, dropping the phone and hugging her knees. How could she have been so stupid as to trust him again? The phone suddenly vibrated, the screen lighting up with the name M. She scrambled for it and answered. "You're late." Mason's voice came through the line, laced with familiar amusement. A lump formed her throat. "Where are you?" "Turn around. Look out the window." She ran to the window. Across the street, a black SUV was parked in the shadows. Its headlights flashed twice. A tall figure was leaning against the driver's side door, a phone pressed to his ear. It was him. "Come on down," he said. "We have a flight to catch." "A flight? To where?" "Chicago." She frowned. "Why Chicago?" "Because," he chuckled, "that's where our wedding is." She almost dropped the phone. "What?" "Don't dawdle, runaway bride," he said, and hung up. Chloe flew down the stairs and out the door. Mason was standing by the car, dressed in a sharp suit, his hair perfectly styled. He opened his arms as she ran toward him. She stopped a few feet away, looking him up and down. "What is the meaning of this?" "We're eloping," he said, the picture of innocence. "Isn't that why you came to find me?" "I came." "To what?" He raised an eyebrow. "Apologize? Profess your undying love? Beg me to marry you?" Her face flushed. "Don't be an ass. I came to get my dignity back. You and your fake Leo Sterling played me for a fool." He laughed. "That was Alex, my college roommate. He's a decent actor, isn't he? Your father never suspected a thing. And my mother was in on it." "Of course," he said, opening the passenger door. "Your mother is my greatest ally. Get in. I'll explain on the way." She hesitated, then slid into the seat. The car smelled of leather and mint. Mason started the engine and pulled onto the highway heading east. "So," she said, breaking the silence, "this was all your plan? To bankrupt my father, and then marry his daughter," he finished for her. "Correct. Is that your revenge?" He shook his head. "It's not revenge. It's justice. Your father drove my father out of business. I exposed his financial crimes. We're even." Her eyes widened. "My father did what to yours?" "It was 20 years ago," he said, his voice flat. "My father was a small contractor. He refused to cut corners on a Davenport project, so your father framed him for negligence and buried him in debt. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. The day he jumped, I was walking home from school." Chloe covered her mouth. "Oh my God. Mason, I had no idea." Of course you didn't, he said with a bitter smile. Your father is very good at burying his secrets. I didn't find out the whole truth until after I graduated. So you really did get close to me for revenge? She whispered. The car sped up, passing a semi-truck before he answered. That was the plan at first. But then I realized Charles Davenport's daughter was nothing like him, he said, glancing at her. You were rebellious and stubborn, yes, but you were also kind and brave. You're the one who secretly switched out the champagne for sparkling cider at galas, because you knew the driver was a recovering alcoholic. You anonymously funded a single mother's college education. You even leaked information to one of your father's competitors because you knew they were being unfairly targeted. She was stunned. How? How do you know all that? Like I told you, he smiled. I know the real you, not the heiress, just Chloe. She stared out the window at the dark landscape rushing by, her mind a whirlwind. This whole time, he had been watching her, learning every secret part of her. It wasn't stalking. It was love. So now what? She asked softly. My father's company is in ruins. You have your revenge. Why do you still want to marry me? The lights of a distant airport began to appear on the horizon. Because, he said finally, I discovered that the satisfaction of revenge is nothing compared to the joy of loving you. Her heart felt like it was going to burst. She turned her face to the window, so he wouldn't see the tears in her eyes. The Chicago O'Hare Airport was a chaotic hive of activity. Mason parked the car and retrieved 2 suitcases from the trunk. You even packed for me? She asked, amazed. Just the basics, he said, handing one to her. Clothes are your size. You're on your own for makeup and underwear. She opened the case. Inside were a few simple outfits, a pair of flat shoes, toiletries, and a copy of a new novel by her favorite author. How did you know I love Elena Ferrante? You wrote your senior thesis on her, he said, taking her hand. Come on, we're going to be late. She let him lead her through the bustling terminal. His hand was warm and strong, his grip just right. It felt familiar, like they had been holding hands for years. He had arranged everything in advance. They breezed through check-in and security, boarding their flight to a private terminal without waiting in a single line. As they settled into the plush seats of a private jet, she finally asked, How long have you been planning this? He buckled his seatbelt. Since the day you ran away. Be more specific. Specifically, he turned to her, the moment you were gone, I contacted my new firm in Singapore to confirm the job offer, sold the condo, moved the money to an offshore account, and began compiling the final evidence against your father. And then you follow me to Havenwood? I didn't follow you. I protected you, he corrected. Your father sent 3 different teams of investigators after you. I led all of them astray. She thought of Alex, the fake PI. So you were just waiting for me? Not just waiting, he smiled. I was also preparing this. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Her breath caught in her throat. He opened it. Inside was a stunning, unique diamond ring. A deep blue, oval-cut center stone surrounded by a halo of smaller white diamonds, like a flower in bloom. I was going to give this to you at the wedding, he said, taking the ring out. Better late than never. She stared at it, her throat tight. Mason, we need to talk about. The plane is taking off, he said, fastening her seatbelt for her. We'll talk when we land. During the short flight, Chloe pretended to sleep, her mind racing. She believed that he loved her. But did he love her, or the rebellious ideal he had built up his head? And what about her? Did she love him, or was she just swept up in the drama of it all? They landed at a private airfield outside the city. A car was waiting. He gave the driver an address she knew all too well. The Four Seasons Hotel, the site of their original, disastrous wedding. You booked a room? More than a room, he said with a mysterious smile. The hotel lobby was quiet. The night manager greeted Mason by name and handed him a key card. Everything is prepared as you requested, Mr. Hayes. The elevator took them to the top-floor presidential suite. Mason opened the door and gestured for her to enter. She stepped inside and gasped. The entire suite had been transformed. It was filled with flowers and candles. A small, elegant archway of white roses stood before the panoramic window, overlooking the glittering city. This is our wedding, he said, closing the door behind them. I do. She turned to him. Mason, we can't just. I know what you're thinking, he said, walking toward her. You think this is too fast, too crazy. You're not sure if I love you, or just the idea of you. Her eyes widened. How did you know? Because I know you, he said, cupping her face in his hands. Just like I know you sing in the shower. You hate coconut, you're terrified of pigeons, but you love hawks, and... He leaned in and whispered in her ear, You secretly love it when I kiss your neck. A shiver went down her spine. This isn't fair. You've had years to study me, and I... And you just need to listen to your heart, he said, stepping back. So, Chloe, do you love me? The only sound in the room was their breathing. She looked at his face, illuminated by the soft candlelight, and she knew the answer. This arrogant, brilliant, stubborn man had loved her, watched over her, and waited for her. And she, in her own chaotic way, had been running toward him all along. Yes, she whispered. I love you, Mason. His eyes lit up, but his next words almost made her hit him. Excellent. But we'll need a full medical workup before the wedding. I'm not interested in damaged goods. What? She shrieked, her anger flaring. Mason Hayes, you are an absolute bastard. He roared with laughter and caught her as she lunged at him. I'm kidding. God, you're beautiful when you're angry. Let me go, she struggled. I take it back. Too late, he said, his arms tightening around her. You said the words. Now you have to take responsibility for me. She stopped fighting and looked up at him. You played me. From the very beginning, he said with a triumphant grin. But you loved every minute of it, didn't you? She rose on her toes and kissed him. He was surprised for a second. Then he kissed her back, a deep, passionate kiss that left them both breathless. Is that a yes? He murmured. She smiled slyly. I'll tell you in the morning. The next morning, Mason woke up to an empty bed. Chloe. He sat up. The suite was silent. The only thing on the table beside the bed was a folded piece of paper. Gotta pick up my dress. Be at the altar at noon. Don't be late, groom. The runaway bride. He stared at the note, then broke into a wide grin. This time, he knew she would be there. At 11:50 a.m., in a small, private ballroom in the hotel, Mason stood under the floral arch. The only guests were Chloe's mother, Mia, Alex, and a few of Mason's close friends. You sure she's coming? Alex whispered nervously. After last time. She'll be here, Mason said, checking his watch. At 12 o'clock sharp, the large double doors at the end of the aisle were thrown open. Everyone turned, but the doorway was empty. Mason's heart sank. Just as a wave of despair washed over him, music began to play from the side of the room. A different door opened, and Chloe appeared, radiant in a simple, elegant white gown. She wasn't walking slowly down the aisle on her father's arm. She was running, her veil flying behind her, a brilliant, joyful smile on her face. She ran all the way to him, stopping breathlessly before the altar. I'm 30 seconds late, she panted. Traffic was a nightmare. He smiled. You were worth the wait. The officiant began to speak, but Chloe didn't hear a word. She was looking into Mason's eyes, which were filled with a love so profound it took her breath away. When the officiant said, You may now kiss the bride, Mason leaned in and whispered, You're not getting away this time. She smiled and kissed him. Who said I wanted to? 3 years later. Singapore. Chloe stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of their penthouse apartment, gazing out at the city lights. Behind her, Mason was gently rocking their 6-month-old daughter to sleep. She's finally down, he whispered, laying the baby in her crib. That was harder than negotiating a $10 million contract. Chloe turned, smiling. The great Mason Hayes, defeated by a baby, only by the two of you, he said, coming to wrap his arms around her from behind. What are you thinking about? The first time we met, she said, leaning back against him. Was it really at the IIT exhibition? 100%, he said, kissing the top of her head. Red dress. Almost fell. She turned in his arms to face him. Then why didn't you just ask me out? Because I was a broke kid just out of school, he laughed. Though in hindsight, it probably would have been a lot less complicated. But not nearly as interesting, she said, rising on her toes to kiss him. By the way, my father is flying in tomorrow. Mason made a theatrical groan. Again? Didn't he just leave last month? He likes you more than me now, she rolled her eyes. It's all. Mason, could you look at this new proposal? Mason, what do you think of this contract? Mason. He laughed. What can I say? I'm his favorite son-in-law. Oh, shut up, she said, playfully swatting his chest. Go check the baby monitor. I think the signal's weak. He started toward the nursery, then turned back. Hey, remind your dad to bring the paperwork for that new waterfront project. You tell him. That would be unseemly. It would make me look too eager, he said with a wink. I have to maintain my image as the noble son-in-law who married for love, not money. She grabbed a throw pillow and hurled it at him. You are the worst. He caught it easily, his laughter filling their beautiful home. Outside, the lights of Singapore glittered like a sea of fallen stars. Inside, their own little world was shining just as brightly. This time, no one was running away from anything. They were home,